Thanks to unforeseen work obligations, I didn't get home until late on Thursday, and that meant I had to stay up late to get some of the final projects like wiring done on Belle. As such, we didn't get to the water until about noontime. So here we are passing Outer Green Island. We're well underway at this point, and it's starting to get fairly windy, so we decided to take the foresail down. And you can see the water's fairly smooth, but it's a little bit bumpy. There's really big swells, and but they're long. They're a couple 100 feet long, 100 feet long maybe, but they're maybe 6 to 8 feet, 10 feet tall. At this point, it's getting a little bit too windy, and we're heeling a lot, and Diana's not feeling on top of her game at the moment, so we decided to take the foresail down. And we're still making really good time because the wind seems to be picking up. In this shot, you can see the waves are getting choppier and choppier. The swells are about the same, but we're getting more chop on top of them. So shortly after we pass Halfway Rock here in the middle, that's where the lighthouse is, things start taking a pretty steep turn towards the worst. The wind is picking up and the swells are about the same, but the chop is picked up a lot, making an equivalent period cut of about a half. We go from rolling over big long 100-foot rollers to getting tossed around by maybe 30-foot, 40-foot long rollers of about the same height. So the period decreased quite a bit, and that's where things get uncomfortable. Big giant waves don't bother us much. You rise and fall with them, but when the period is close to the size of the boat, then the boat starts to get tossed around quite a bit. So as we move out, things are getting really choppy. We're trying to figure out what we're going to do. And Diana's getting really green at this point, and she's having trouble. She asks us to point into the waves a bit more than we have been, because it's pretty choppy, because she needs to use the ladies' room. So we can see this little straight line here where we change direction shortly is where I try to point into the waves a bit. More of a diagonal approach, and it smooths the boat out from a roll to a pitch, or at least more of a pitch. And we get back on track here. I'm pretty much single-handing at this point. My first mate's somewhat out of commission, just trying to hold on to her lunch. And then things get even worse. And if I zoom in here a little bit and slide over, you can see there's a bunch of squiggles going on. And unfortunately, we are running with the waves at this point. I'm trying to figure out where we're going to set shore, because I know we're not going to make Southport Booth Bay by dark. So I'm just trying to find a straight line to a good anchorage for the night. But just as I'm starting to do that, and we're running with the waves, so poor little beast is surfing down the backside of these waves and then getting pulled taut when it climbs back up again, and with a bounce, a boonk. And right about here, the painter tears loose from the front of the dinghy, and the beast is free and floating away. So, in a bit of a panic, we quickly take the mainsail down and start up Not So Big Johnson and start motoring in an attempt to fetch the beast. Normally the free rubber boat wouldn't disturb me to lose, but it did have our Grumpy von Frankenstein Mercury 110 on board that I've had for a long time, and engines are kind of expensive, and rubber boats are not. So, and it also has our spare fuel in it, although the tank in Belle is pretty much full at this point. We only motored for a short while to get out of harbor. So I think it's about 15 harrowing minutes here, 8:48 to 9. So about 10 to 15 minutes. It seemed a lot longer. We had to make several passes back and forth. And you can see that as we're moving forward here, so is the beast. And finally we get hold of it with the boat hook, and I tie on a makeshift harness, a bridle between the two forward D-rings on the side grabs, and we start changing course. We decide, you know what, I think we need to move to the closest shore that we can in a direction that's horizontal to the waves. We can't be running with the waves at this point. They're just too big, too uncomfortable, and I'm basically running the boat by myself and watching two kids in a green first mate. So we motor across, heading for Cliff Island, which is actually an anchorage that I had sort of scoped out in advance, thinking that Diana was going to have to work on Friday, and that maybe we could just go there earlier in the evening and park, and it seems like a good place to go. So for the next 40 minutes, it's not so smooth motoring. We're getting rocked quite a bit because we're going sideways to the waves. Keel is keeping us upright, and we aren't really in any real danger. The boat's staying dry. There's not even any waves coming over the top at all. The only time we get wet is when a whitecap smacks on the side of the hull and we get a splatter and a spray that comes up into the boat. Other than that, it's actually not a bad ride, and our 3-year-old is having a blast. He's enjoying the roller coaster ride. So then unfortunately here around 4 o'clock, my makeshift bridle unties, and we lose the beast yet again. Fortunately, we've done it before. We've gotten into the rocks, and we've got some screw up time. So you can see here we make a few different loops back and forth, trying to catch the beast again. What's really interesting here is that the beast is actually blowing out to sea, even though the wind is blowing from offshore. It's blowing towards the shoreline, and the waves are certainly going towards the shoreline. The beast is actually drifting out to sea. It's kind of interesting. I wouldn't expect tide or even currents. The next biggest river is quite a ways away from here, but apparently there is a surface current that was pulling the boat out. But at any rate, I did finally grab a hold of it and tied an extra heavy duty set of knots in the line with bow lines, etc. It took some extra time. Given that we were going to be close to the rocks pretty soon, I wanted to make sure we were not doing this again. So we took some time and made sure it was super secure, and then motored in towards our anchorage. You can see about here, I'll bring the cursor forward. We're having to start to change our course again, and I'm trying to stay as far upwind of these rocks as I can and still come into the shore. The navigation is pointing us to skim right over these. It's deep enough here, but if you screw up, if you have any kind of problem, motor dies or something, you're pushed right into the rocks. So if we stay closer to this edge over here, if something happens, we've got some time to recover if anything happens. But unfortunately, from this point on into the opening of the harbor here, we're running with the waves again, and the dinghy is taking a beating behind us. So I tried hooking up a snubber with a bungee cord, and it's not working out very well. So I end up having to snub it with my arm. So I've got the painter tied to the starboard side rear cleat, and I'm sitting at port with my left hand on the tiller. I'm using my right hand to absorb the pulls from the dinghy as it comes down the waves and gets pulled tight again. So after that excruciating ride, we round this buoy and into a perfectly flat harbor. I mean, it's just night and day from here to here. What a difference, and a relief. There's almost no wind actually by the time we get into the far harbor. This side over here has a bunch of moorings, and these are like destination moorings for locals apparently. And this side is pretty much empty. There are 2 white moorings over here. I didn't go investigate them. There was another sailboat moored over here, anchored rather over here, and we decided to set anchor a good distance away from it, nice safe distance, with these rocks that go exposed at low tide in between the two halves of the harbor. I had read that these go dry at high tide, and they certainly do. And the swell, for whatever reason, comes through this way, and we rocked and rolled all night long.
Wait, that's 2019. There we go.
James, where are we headed?
Back to the boat.
Where were we?
At a coffee shop.
Well, yeah, we stopped there to download firmware, but where were we before the coffee shop? Restaurant, right?
Yeah.
Boone's? And what did you get?
Yeah, Boone's.
Boone's. Show the artwork.
Boone's.
There you go. Nice. What you looking at?
Looking at this.
What is it?
The tree. Not even close to the edge.
Fortunately, we found Belle right where we left her, despite having dragged anchor when we first set down. We did reset that anchor, and then I brought out a secondary backup anchor with the Beast just to make sure we weren't going to go anywhere while we were in town. So we sat back, ate some cookies, and had some adult beverages while we watched the schooners go by. Shortly after this, the harbor master came by in his little center console and gave us a friendly wave. And then about 10 minutes later, on his way back south, he stopped and asked us if we were staying overnight. To which we replied yes, and to which he replied, please move your boat. We weren't allowed to anchor in or near a mooring field, a little too close for his liking, I guess, despite it being marked as an anchorage on the chart. Well, so we moved, and it turned out to be a pretty good choice anyway. Our new anchorage after a visit from the harbor master. Sunset. Better view of the sunset.
Much better view of the sunset. The sunset's too far.
So this is turning out to be a fun spot. There's all sorts of stuff jumping out of the water here. It's not going to come up on camera now that I got the camera on. But I think we had 4 or 5 fish jump like 3 or 4 feet out of the water. And I think we just had a seal pop up like right behind the Beast. There's no more Mondays. Catamaran from Key West, Florida. We're guessing they're retired. No more Mondays. James has got the binoculars.
Wait, can the camera see through the binoculars?
It can, but it will look kind of crummy. I've done that before to get like zoom in shots. Sure is a nice sunset. Minus the power plant. Hi, camera. Is that the harbor patrol again?
Yeah.
He's the guy that probably told us to move. Oh, I heard a fish jump. Fairly cool. A little warm. And missing the cap. Thanks for watching. Hit that like and subscribe button to see our other videos, and check out what goes on our blogs by checking the show notes. We'll talk to you soon. Bye.